What is going on, everybody? This is Sergey from MMA Soap Opera, and today we're gonna be talking about the main fight of the upcoming UFC 310 event, which is of course Alexandre Pantoja versus Kai Asakura. This definitely has a potential of being an exciting match, and I think that it's a good idea if we're gonna talk a little bit about this Kai Asakura. It's not very often that a fighter comes to UFC and in his UFC debut he fights straight for the belt. But first, if you're into UFC, MMA, all the drama that is happening in the background, make sure to hit subscribe and ring the bell, that way you don't miss any upcoming videos, because that's exactly what we're talking about in here. Alright, and now let's jump into the video. Alright, so let's jump straight into it and let's start talking about this mysterious newcomer Kai Asakura. I can't think of a single other fighter that came into UFC and in their debut they fought for the championship belt right away. I'm not saying that that never happened, but it definitely didn't happen in the recent history. So what exactly makes this Kai Asakura so special? Well, obviously he's a massive MMA star in Japan. He's coming from Japan's own MMA organization RIZIN, and UFC of course already has a couple of current fighters that used to fight in RIZIN, for example Prochaska or Manel Kape. By the way, we're gonna mention Manel Kape a couple of times in this video. So I just watched the new UFC countdown video in which Kai Asakura is talking about his start with MMA, and it's a pretty crazy story. So apparently he has an older brother who was like a street fighter in Japan, and this older brother of his already fought all his opponents in their neighborhood, so there was no one left for him to fight. So crazily enough, one night this dude challenges his younger brother Kai Asakura for a fight, and in the countdown you can actually see the video footage of that fight between the two brothers. But basically in this fight Kai Asakura realized that he has a potential to become an MMA fighter. In the video you can actually see how fast he is, how good reflexes he has, and how athletic he is as well. So he started training MMA, and long story short, he became a rising champion in the bantamweight division. And yeah, what a crazy story to start with MMA, right? So interestingly enough, in the rising he was a bantamweight champion, but in UFC he's actually going one weight class down to the flyweight, and we will definitely have to see how he's gonna be able to adapt to the differences that the RIZIN and UFC have. Well, the first and massive difference of course that he's gonna have to face is the weight cut, because this time obviously he's going to be going down in a weight considerably more than he's used to, and that can have a massive impact on his conditioning, on his performance, on how he's gonna be able to take a punch. And Pantoja has some serious power. We're gonna talk about him in just a second. Then apart from the weight cut, another big difference is that in RIZIN the fighters are fighting in the ring with ropes, whereas in UFC of course we have cage. Fighting with your back to the ropes or to the cage is actually a big difference, because for example if you're in a ring with ropes and your opponent shoots a takedown on you, just the fact that those ropes are flexible, it's giving you a little bit more leeway, a little bit more opportunity to move, so it actually makes it easier for you to avoid the takedown. Whereas if you have your back towards the cage is not flexing, and if your opponent is pushing you towards the cage you have no way of moving, so that way your opponent is gonna have an easier time of grabbing your leg and taking you down. So yeah, that is going to be a big difference that Kai Asakura needs to adapt to. And then a third thing that might stand in the way of Kai Asakura of putting on a great performance is the difference in the rules between RIZIN and UFC. If you look at Kai Asakura's fights in RIZIN, you can actually see how often he is kicking and kneeing ground opponents, which is a big no-no in UFC. I gotta be honest, I watched only a couple of fights of Kai Asakura, so I can't really tell if these attacks are like a favorite or typical way of how Kai Asakura is finishing his fights, but just the fact that he won't be able to do that in UFC, that actually might have a big impact on his performance. Besides, what if his muscle memory kicks in and he's gonna like knee Pantoja when he's on the ground or something like that? That would be crazy to see. Also, another thing that we have to keep in mind, which you won't see in the countdown of course, is the fact that Kai Asakura is not undefeated. He lost, for example, against UFC's Manel Kape. They're like 1-1 against each other. And from the couple of fights of Kai Asakura that I saw and what I read about him, it seems like he has a tendency of getting in the bad jiu-jitsu positions, and he actually can be outstruck. But what is absolutely for certain with Kai Asakura is that he's in his prime, he's super athletic, he's extremely fast, and he packs a massive punch. So how does this stack up against UFC's own flyweight champion Alexandre Pantoja? Let's have a look at it. Alexandre Pantoja, what a walk-in inspiration. Like, you can see that he's a family man, and all the work that he's putting in and all the performances, they all seem to be driven by how dedicated and motivated he is to give life to his kids, a life that he himself didn't have. What I think makes Pantoja so exciting is the fact that he keeps getting in bad positions in a similar way as Charles Oliveira. He keeps getting caught, he keeps getting beat up, but Pantoja is an absolute dog. Like, you can see that regardless of the adversities, the man has a massive heart. He's pretty durable, he has an impressive chin, and of course he's powerful and he finds a way to win. He had some massive fights, notably those against the assassin baby Brandon Moreno. Then he also defeated Manel Kape, which has a win against Kai Asakura. He also defeated Brandon Royval twice, and in his last fight he won against Steve Erceg. So at this point, Alejandro Pantoja not only won the belt, but he also defended it twice. That on itself is a massive advantage that he has against Kai Asakura, just the fact how experienced he is. RIZIN and UFC are pretty different, and just the fact that he's been here for such a long time, he's been in wars in UFC, he's adapted to the rules, all that surely is gonna help Pantoja to win this fight. So, what is my prediction? Well, it's really hard to tell, man, because the level of competition is very different in RIZIN and UFC, so I can't really gauge the fights of Kai Asakura from before. Apart from those fights that he had against Manel Kape, of course, and Manel is actually a great fighter and he's doing well in UFC, so this could be a very competitive match. But in my opinion, this is just a little bit too sudden for him. A debut and already for the belt in the weight class that is lower than what he's used to, I don't know, man. Also considering the other differences that we talked about between RIZIN and UFC, I'm kinda leaning towards Pantoja. Pantoja also seems to be favorite on the betting cards. I just think that Pantoja is durable enough to withstand the attacks of Kai Asakura, despite him being pretty powerful, but Pantoja is powerful himself. And I actually think that he's gonna have advantage in this because his opponent, he just went through a gruesome weight cut. Like, we saw it many times. A great fighter goes down a weight class and all of a sudden starts getting demolished by his opponents because in the lower weight class and after the bigger weight cut, all of a sudden they lose their chin, they start to gas faster, and they just straight up become weaker than in their normal weight class. For example, remember Dan Hooker when he went to flyweight? The dude got destroyed by Arnold Allen. Anyways, my prediction for this fight is probably going to be like 3rd or 4th round TKO for Alejandro Pantoja. Alright guys, this is it for today's video. In just a couple of days we're also going to be talking about Ian Gary and Shavkat Rakhmonov, so make sure to hit subscribe and ring the bell so that you don't miss that video. Also, if you liked the video, make sure to hit like as well. Thank you very much for watching. This was Sergey from MMA Soap Opera, because that's what it is.